All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys had a great Friday. A little choppy out there if you're looking at the minute charts. We're all over the place in the map today. But, the Bulls and the Bears ate pretty well today, right? And even after all the missed earnings yesterday, the big three, Apple, Amazon, Google, all three of them missed on earnings. But the market absorbed some of that this morning, and we did move past 416 real briefly, came back, double top, and we're back here at 412. So let's go and take a look at the weekly charts here. Now, FYI, there's not a ton of economic data coming out next week except your usual jobless claims on Thursdays, et cetera, that I see. But the market is going to look forward to the next CPI release, which will be February the 14th, and that will be Valentine's Day. So that is something the market will look forward to see if we get a surprise hotter CPI or we continue to moderate. If we continue to moderate, I think you will see that the markets continue to move up. And in addition to that, the non-farm payrolls today, that really surprised the markets, but quickly, once again, the market moved on and showed resilient strength, even though Apple, Amazon, Google missed. But check it out. I mean, look at what happened on Apple today. Apple usually does this. Generally, right after the meeting or right after their earnings conference call, they get a big spike up. And we actually hit about 157 on the highs today and closed just a little bit short. Even though the markets came back down, we saw the resiliency of Apple. And this was a cup and handle daily and a breakout with a gap below. Now, there is a gap at 146, so we just have to be careful there. Once Apple starts selling off, like next week potentially, you'll see Apple try to fill that gap. Now, starting with the SPY weekly chart, this is your weekly trend line that we rejected ever starting on January 3rd of 2022. Rejection here, rejection here, rejection here. And this last week was the first week we actually closed above the trend line. And this is another green week for the NASDAQ and the Qs, the tech sector. And we closed right about 412. I'm sorry, SPYs. This is not the tech sector. We closed right about 412 today with a little bit of upper shadow here, but you can see the volume on this particular week is a little higher than last week as well. Now, the only thing that I will have to say about this is that both on the daily charts and the weekly charts, we are quite overbought. Okay. Now, we can obviously go overbought for a long period of time. All right. We've seen that before, but certainly you're checking off the bearish boxes here with the upper shadow here. 418 is that resistance. We actually hit 418 in December in the pre-market. If you remember the CPI, the soft CPI surprise. All right. So this is overbought here, and we are definitely overbought on the weekly with the CCI. So I'm going to say that we do need a healthy pullback to the trend line at some point in the next couple of weeks. I do see potentially 400 retest or retesting this trend line here, which is absolutely needed, right? To reset some stochastics, to reset some indicators, and then therefore the bulls will come back in. Now the daily chart, we had an interesting close here. So this is kind of an inverted hammer, a green inverted hammer, right? On the daily, we had a little slightly lower volume than the last couple days here. But once again here, your indicator here, stochastics and CCI is overbought, and I do think that we're going to need to see a little bit of cool off. So next week, I'm going to say, now today, 411 held twice. Okay, so we had a double bottom bounce pretty much at the 411 level, right? And this is probably a much weaker bounce than what you saw this morning when we ran up to 416 from the 411s, right? So I'm going to say if we cannot hold 411, 410 next week, which is this particular resistance, or was resistance, now is acting as support. If we cannot hold 410, my next week target is going to be as we move down. You're going to see some volume gaps here, and we could end up very well at 405 next week to actually close out some imbalances in the market. As you can see, this was the candle from FOMC meeting on Wednesday, and we shot up, right? And there's some gaps that needs to be filled here for the SPY here. So I'm going to say 405 next week is going to be my target on the downside. Moving on to the Qs. All right, another inverted hammer, which is typically kind of bullish, right? I mean, it's mostly held up by Apple today, but we do have a daily and an hourly gap at 303 area. All right, so I'm going to say that we should be coming down at about 300 level next week to retest. And then that's going to be a very strong psychological level, okay, to hold 300. So I think that'll hold next week. But so my downside target, we fill that gap on the 303 and we come back to 300 and hold that line until potentially the following week where we do get the CPI. If you look at the weekly chart, the tech sector did close above the weekly trend line for 2 weeks in a row. All right. So the tech sector actually have 5 green weeks. And you look at this high lifted up CCI, that is way overbought. Okay. So this has to come down. We do see great volume on the week. That was mostly driven by Amazon, Google, and Apple buying this today because of their earnings yesterday. So that's the forecast for next week. Once again, Q, I'm going to say 300, and the SPY, I'm going to put it on the daily side here at 405. All right. Hope you guys had a great week, and we'll see you guys on Monday.